It may be game day, but we're still working hard. Hi, everybody. This is Uncle Hondo, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, being joined by my very dear friend, the editor and publisher of the Spun.com. He's joined us for close to, what is it? It's 15 years, right, Matt?
Uh, I think it's going to be 13, 2012. It's 13.
All
Yeah.
right. It's whenever Rutgers joined the Big Ten.
Yes.
He and I became buddies, and now look at him like family. The great Matt Halatic from the Spun.com, the absolute best website on the internet where pop culture meets sports, and it's awesome. Matt, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk a lot of Raiders. We're going to talk a lot of other stuff today because it's game day, and just because the Raiders are out doesn't mean the NFL stops, obviously. But let's start with Tom Telesco. Doesn't fit in the vision of where Tom Brady's going. He did a very good job, but he moves on. Antonio Pierce moves on. Um, I'm hearing from people in the NFL, and I believe this, the Raiders know where they want this to end. They're casting a wide net to get a lot of free evaluations of their franchise, but they know where they want this to end, and they're going to be getting there. Your thoughts of Tom Brady literally seizing the moment?
Well, isn't this what you brought him in for? I mean, we've talked about this before. This is his opportunity to kind of impact this franchise, and you hope that when you bring in, the greatest quarterback of all time, seven-time Super Bowl winner, that he's going to help restore your franchise to glory. Now, of course, there's a difference between playing football and coaching it and running it at an executive level, so there's no guarantees. But, you knew when Tom Brady came in that he wasn't going to be a passive owner, even if he's only got a minority stake, and he's not going to lose. He's not going to want to lose. He does not want to be part of a franchise that isn't winning. So this isn't a surprise. When they got rid of Antonio Pierce and said they were keeping Tom Telesco, I thought that made some sense just because of the fact that I thought Tom Telesco did do a good job with his first draft. And also, I thought that Antonio Pierce was on a little bit more, even though they came at the same time, he was on a little bit more of a trial run than Telesco was at GM. But, you always want your GM and head coach on the same timeline, on the same path. And I think that if the Raiders have a vision, Tom Brady has a vision for what he wants here, and Tom Telesco doesn't fit, then it made sense to get rid of him and move on. And, you thank him, drafted Brock Bowers, drafted a couple of pieces along the offensive line that seem like they're going to be helpful for years to come. And you look at, the Raiders falling into where they've fallen the last few years, a lot of it's because of bad drafting over the last decade. So if Tom Telesco was able to give you a good draft in his 1 year, I think Raider fans will look back on him fondly, assuming the team takes the next steps and starts winning.
I agree with you 100%. One of the things that I find fascinating is I've had a front row seat now for 6 years watching Mark Davis and his metamorphosis into what I believe is a very good owner. I hear people say all the time, well, he doesn't know this and he doesn't know that. No, I think what makes him good is he admits it now. And he understands you don't have to be a hands on owner. Look at Baltimore. Um, to be, when I say hands on, meaning a football guy.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Detroit, where Sheila certainly loves the team and is involved, but she's not a football person. Again, I mentioned Baltimore. There are others. And so I think what he's doing is I'm willing to spend any amount of money to do anything. What are your thoughts on the metamorphosis of Mark Davis?
Well, again, as I've said before, I think the true test is going to be, and I think when you'll see his perception kind of shift is if they start winning consistently. Because right now people are saying, oh, Raiders are on their fourth or fifth coach in the last 6 or 7 years. I can't remember exactly the figures, but, they're changing guys, they're doing things. So people may not necessarily see some of the transformations he's made or some of the adjustments he's made behind the scenes. I do think there is a lot of respect and there's a lot of acknowledgement over the fact that he's willing to pay. Simply by the fact that they have had multiple coaches being paid at the same time, guys who are on buyouts and guys who are currently holding the role. So he's not going to, be a penny pincher. He's going to spend what it takes to be a winning franchise. Now the key is, do we have the people in place to make these decisions and run the team that are going to make it a winning franchise.
I agree with you 100%. Let's talk about a few people. Let's talk about a guy that I think is interesting. I think somebody will give him a shot, and that's Pete Carroll.
I think that, listen, Pete Carroll, I think is 73, so he's getting a little bit up there in age, but he was a guy who, throughout his time in Seattle, they were consistent winners. He was able to adapt. He wasn't a guy stuck in his ways during that tenure. So he was very in tune with how the NFL had changed and, all different types of things like that. So I think that if you hire him, you're not getting a guy who's a dinosaur, even though he's in his 70s. He's still, by all accounts, looks to be in great shape. He looks to be healthy. He looks to be a guy that has a couple more years left to coach if he wants to. And I think that he would be a great fit for a team that is looking to establish a winning culture and get a guy who has been proven and successful to run their program.
There's one interview the Raiders are going to conduct because I think it's a brilliant move. Steve Spagnuolo. This is a guy that you get to bring in your biggest rival, arguably top 3 defensive mind in the NFL today, and say, give us your evaluation of our team. I mean,
sure.
This is a no-brainer. This to me is the brilliance of a Tom Brady.
And Spagnuolo is drawing some attention around the league. He's getting some more interviews. Obviously, he's been a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator now at 2 different stops. His head coaching tenure with the Rams didn't go well, but you're seeing people, I think, really come around more to just how knowledgeable he is and thinking about giving him a second shot to run his own team. And like you said, even if the Raiders don't hire him, getting him in the building, getting his opinion on the Raiders operation, the Raiders team, roster, picking his brain, maybe getting some idea of what he's thinking or how Kansas City runs things is an excellent move. I think that when you go through a coaching search or a GM search, you obviously, you have some targets in mind, and you probably have done some legwork behind the scenes, so you know who you might want to hire or you're hoping impresses you. But you want to cast a wide net because getting as much feedback as possible and getting, the reconnaissance and intel on your team is imperative. Because I think if you're not learning what your thought like around, what people think of you around the league and where you can improve and what you do well and what you don't do well, you're doing yourself a disservice.
But to get your biggest rival's opinion, to me, I think is a big, huge deal. And the only thing I would do different is I would have added the defensive coordinator from the Bolts and brought him in, Jesse Minter, and interviewed him as well. But to get your chief rivals to tell you what they think of your franchise and for free is you can't beat that, can you?
You can't. Minter is a Michigan guy too, from having won the national championship last year. So him and Brady combined over that. So that would have been a good interview. Maybe they'll add him after the playoffs this weekend.
Maybe.
All
right. Now we'll keep going. You guys ran an article to Spun I thought was amazing about Tom Brady and Fox. And I thought this was an interesting story, and I got to get you to expand on it, please.
Sure. I mean, you're talking about the one where he's predicted to leave the job, or the fans wanting him to leave? Because we had 2 different ones.
Well, no, where they're predicting it, saying, come on, at some point he's got to go. The whole league knows it's kind of what it is.
Right. This is Dan Patrick. Now, sometimes Dan Patrick, as respected as he is, as good as he's reputation he's built in the media game for as long as he's done it, when he, if he's riffing off the cuff or he's giving his opinions or giving his, projections, it's not, set in stone report, lock it up. But his thought process was sound. Basically, what he was saying is Tom Brady is a competitor, ultimate competitor. He's now an owner. He's obviously heavily involved in this Raiders coaching and GM search. And Dan Patrick said, I don't see him being somebody who's not going to be all into something. And, if it's one thing, he's not all into broadcasting because he's got this ownership thing. And because of how much pride he has and how competitive he is, he's not going to want to just be, part-time as an owner. Obviously, the Fox contract is massive, but he's already gotten 1 year of that, and he doesn't need the money. So, I think that this is something I'm not reporting. I'm not saying this will happen, but it wouldn't shock me because, Tom Brady's still new to broadcasting. Football is at the heart of what he does. He loves the game of football, and he wants to be a competitor, and he wants to win. And I think that the best chance to do that is as an owner with the Raiders. So I could see a scenario where he cuts short his time as a Fox broadcaster, whether it's after this year, after he does Super Bowl, or down the road, just to focus on being an executive.
I've been reporting this and I stand by it. I think he's going to do 4 more years of TV, but I absolutely agree. I don't think he does his whole contract. Let's turn our attention to the Lions. I mean, everybody's interviewing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. They are about to be decimated, which is what you want when you're a successful team. And this is where Dan Campbell goes from a really good coach to a great coach. Really good coaches can win. Great coaches can lose their staff and keep winning. This is going to be, and I'm on the Dan Campbell train, so don't take this as a criticism. But this is, I think, the next part of his metamorphosis is losing his staff and being able to keep the winning going.
Right. And I think that now there is a possibility from I've seen reports, people think that Ben Johnson could stay because he's being very selective with the job he takes. And obviously neither of those guys has an offer yet. So you don't know if you're definitely losing them, but they're coveted. They're getting interviews around the league. And when you win and you win big the way the Lions have the last couple of years, your assistant coaches, your coordinators are going to get looks. That's, like you said, that's what you want. That's a sign of a good franchise, a sign of a good operation. I also think that it speaks to maybe a little added sense of urgency for the Lions to get this done this year. You heard Dan Campbell talk about after they lost the NFC title game last year at San Francisco. It was a tight game. They lost the lead in the second half, and he said, "You don't know if you're going to be back here." And he was honest with his players. He told them, "I don't know if we're going to be back here again." Fast forward to now, 15-2, 1 seed in the NFC. They only have to win 1 home playoff game to get back to the NFC title game, and they got a good chance, even with the injuries, to get to the first Super Bowl in franchise history. But there is maybe a little bit of added pressure, or some type of motivation to, I think, get the job done and at least get to the Super Bowl this year, considering they might be losing their assistants.
I agree with you. All right, let's turn to Deion Sanders. He did something very Deionish. And he was on CBS and they were asking him, he's like, "No, I'm committed to Colorado. I want to be in Colorado. But the only way I would consider leaving is if an NFL team offered me a chance to coach both of my sons." Talking about Shiloh and Shadur. He clearly made it clear, go out and pull a Bronny, go out and get both my kids, and I'll come. I thought it was funny. I thought it was typical Deion, and I thought it was brilliant.
It is, because it keeps the discussion going. It keeps the his name around. People will be bringing it up. Obviously, there's not any real right now. There's not a situation like that exists. People talk about him. Would the Raiders be interested? But the Raiders would, even if they did hire him, they'd have to obviously trade up to get Shador. But it would be interesting to see that happen. And it would be a major commitment and a major leap of faith by an NFL team, because now you're taking on a guy to not just run your franchise who hasn't been an NFL head coach before, shown some success in college, don't get me wrong, but hasn't done it before at the NFL level. And he's going to coach both of his kids, which adds an added element there too, especially when one is the quarterback, which is the most important, most scrutinized position. And the other one, Shiloh, is, by all accounts, a fringe NFL prospect. He's going to maybe a special teamer, backup at best. So I think it would be a major leap of faith for a team to do that. But you never know. Some of these NFL teams may want to make a big splash, and they may believe in Deion and believe in Shador and believe in what they can deliver.
There's been a lot of talk about the Patriots and them making a sham of the Rooney Rule. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't know that I see it that way. I don't know that I don't either. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, listen, I think that it looks highly suspicious when, first of all, people have been linking Mike Vrabel to the Patriots for weeks, even before Gerard Mayo was fired. The season was still going on, and people were saying Vrabel's got to be the guy. He'd be interested. Go get Mike Vrabel. And I think this is where the Rooney Rule, and I'm not the first person to make this point, I won't be the last, but this is where things get complicated. Because, with coaching searches, organizations, pro teams, colleges, they know who they want to target. They know who might be available. They know who they look at if they need to hire somebody. So when you know that, and especially in instances where there's one or two guys that you really want, any candidate besides that is going to be looked at as a sham candidate. And now you have to fulfill the Rooney Rule. And I mean, listen, Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich have had some great success as assistants in the NFL. They didn't coach in the NFL this past season. So it really looked like a sham interview, or just kind of making a mockery of it by giving these guys interviews when they had no chances to get the job. Now, on the flip side, if you're Pep Hamilton, if you're Byron Leftwich, you know what the deal is, you know what the game is, but you are looking to probably get back into the NFL, and this gives you an opportunity to get in front of an organization and get your name back out there. So there is a little bit of something there for the coaching candidates, but I do understand why the Patriots are getting scrutinized for it, because it was blatantly obvious. They brought in two black coaches on one day, guys that were not even, this isn't even like, they interviewed, Aaron Glenn and, and Brian Flores, two guys who are being talked about as legitimate NFL head coaching candidates here. And Flores has a connection to New England, and they interviewed them on the same day. They brought in two guys that no one's really talking about, and it just seems as if they're clearing the decks to hire Mike Vrabel.
So I want to go somewhere with you on this. And for the interest of full disclosure, I have a son who's not white. He's brown. He's half Filipino and half black. And I'm gonna say this to you. Matt Millen, as you know, is a dear friend of mine. And Matt refused when people asked him about interviewing when the rumors were out there that the Lions had hired Steve Mariucci. He didn't lie to guys. He said, "We absolutely have. And he's going to be our guy. And if you don't want to interview, that's fine. I don't blame you. But I'm not going to lie to you either and pretend and tell you you have a chance." Now, one day when I get to release Matt's book, people are going to know the story there, which is a sham that he got blamed for it. But that's another story for another day. The point is, I always respected Matt and love him anyways as a dear friend, but I always respected that he didn't feel like it was right to interview guys and not tell them the truth. To me, that's where I have a problem with the Rooney Rule. If people know who they want to go after, it's almost disrespectful to make them have to go interview people who don't have a chance, or at least just be honest and say, you know what? Now, let me give you an example. The Steelers were going with Russ Grimm.
Yeah, that's just going to say that. Yep.
And then they interview Mike Tomlin, and there's a term in the NFL now called being Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin so blew him away, he got the job. So I get why the rule is there. I'm not hating the rule. But if you do it open-minded, then I love it. But if you're already predetermined, that's my guy. I don't know. It almost sets with me as disrespectful. We elaborate what you think.
I agree with you. I think that it can be, especially when now listen, again, getting a chance to talk with these teams can be useful for any coaching candidate, even if they don't get hired, just for the experience, just for the getting your name, the marketability. But it is a little disrespectful because I think everybody knows where the Patriots want to go in their coaching search. And then you have to have to interview 2 minority candidates. And then when you have them interview on the same day and announce it at the same tweet, and it just looks like, and it looks bad. It does. It looks like we had to hustle in our interviews with the 2 minority candidates. Here's 2 black coaches. We talked to them. Now we're going to go hire the guy we want. And I don't blame the Patriots for having a target because we know, again, with coaching searches, teams have targets. They know who they'll talk to ahead of time. I remember, I can't remember. It might have been Tim Pernetti when he was the AD of Rutgers. It was definitely an athletic director one time when I was there, was covering the team or was a student, said that, when you are, or maybe it was Greg Schiano talking about coaching candidates, when you are in charge of something and you could lose, whether you're an AD, you could lose your head coach, or head coach, you could lose your coordinator. You should have a list in your desk, a list that there of candidates that you want to talk to, people you're interested in. So your targets. And in some cases with the NFL especially, there's one guy that these teams want. And I think that when that happens, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that happening, there being one guy that they want, it makes for such an awkward situation because any other interview is going to feel disrespectful. And then when you add in the Rooney Rule element, it becomes even more disrespectful, where I don't blame coaches for feeling like I'm just a token here.
All right. Who's going to be the next Patriot coach?
I think it's going to be Mike Vrabel. I think they're going to get Vrabel. I think that he's going to be the guy.
Fascinating times. All right, Michael. Next week, we're going to get your Super Bowl predictions.
Matt, you go.
Oh, what did I call you?
Michael. We're so deep in the weeds with the Vrabel discussion.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about Vrabel, and I called one of my dearest friends on planet Earth, Michael. All right, I'm going to start calling you Michael, Matt.
Yeah, maybe we could. Yeah, a little alter ego for the site.
All right, so next week we're going to get your prediction for the Super Bowl. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Awesome. Have a good one.